Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and hear me talk about the Federal Aviation Administration and what we can do at the Federal Aviation Administration. I'm hoping that some of you will find some interest in working for the FAA. I am from the Federal Aviation Administration's National Outreach Team for Diversity and Inclusion. And just to see what we do, our mission for our particular team is to try to incorporate or include as many people in having opportunities with the FAA as possible. So we aim to achieve diversity and inclusion through internal and external outreach and consultations with our internal managers, as well as organizations like FIU. So we do this on a regular basis, trying to get individuals to come and work at the FAA. Now, here's just some of the things that we do at the FAA from the standpoint of our National Outreach and Diversity Team. One of the things we really try to focus in on is making certain that individuals or underrepresented individuals have an opportunity to work at the FAA. Some of the things that we try to target is women, Hispanics, and Latinos, all minority groups, and individuals with disabilities. And we try to work nationwide with all of our managers, trying to increase the number of individuals who have these types of, what can I say, not shortcomings, but there are, what can I say here, underrepresented organizations or underrepresented groups within the community that we try to get on board at the FAA. And here's some of the things that we look at. If you think about that, if you see the picture there, it's for some individuals, it's easy to work their way up the top, get opportunities in different organizations. And then there's some individuals who can make it a certain level, and then they have this huge obstacle in order to make it any further. So what we try to do with our outreach team is to make that obstacle a little bit smaller, so that everyone can have a fair opportunity to gain employment at the FAA. So again, our goal, our objective is to increase the diversity and inclusion at the FAA's workforce. Now, you may think about diversity and you think about people with differences in their background, maybe race, nationality, gender, all of those things make up diversity. But it's interesting that diversity and inclusion, it's separate. You have to have the diverse team, and that's a great thing, but it's of no benefit if you have a diverse team, but you're not including individuals who may be different from you. So that's where the inclusion comes into play. So we really try to not only encourage managers to have a diverse workforce, but we also try to make certain that they include others when they're making decisions with regard to their line of business. And here's the FAA's mission, or what the FAA does as an overall organization. We're a part of the Department of Transportation. Now, the Department of Transportation has a secretary who is the head of the department. However, the FAA does not have a secretary. The FAA has an administrator. So the FAA organization is under the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation secretary reports directly into the president. So, and one of the things that we do at the FAA is to regulate the airline industry, and we also oversee all aspects of the aviation within the United States. So basically, we control the national airspace system. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into some of the specific jobs that are at the FAA. For instance, just some of the other things that we do, we regulate civil aviation, and we also are the ones who control or do all the air traffic. So when you go to a airport and you see a tower at the airport, the individuals that's working in that tower are FAA employees. They're air traffic controllers. They're at the airport to control traffic from at that particular airport. And as we go through and talk more about air traffic controllers, I'll give you some more insight on the different types of air traffic controllers also. And we also develop and carry out programs that control traffic noise. So we often, when they build an airport, they just can't put an airport anywhere. There are certain regulations that have to be followed in order to put an airport in different places to control noise and other things that can impact or affect the environment. So it's a lot involved with that. And that's why often we need civil engineers, environmental engineers to really help develop where the FAA will put airports in the future. Now, here's a map of the FAA organization. The organization is broken down into 3 service areas: Western, Central, and Eastern service areas. And then within those service areas, there's broken down into regions. You got the New England region, Eastern region, Southern region, and so on. And then from there, our headquarters is here in Washington, D.C., which is what I'm a part of. And then we have an aeronautical center that's in Oklahoma City. At the aeronautical center, that's where all of the training is done for air traffic controllers. And again, I'll talk about that a little more as we get into some of the specific positions at the FAA. Now, here you see a list of all the mission critical positions at the FAA. And we call them mission criticals because they're the most important jobs that we have. You think about it, if there wasn't any air traffic controllers, no one would get in the plane. So that's why air traffic controllers are your #1 mission critical position. And then you got airway transportation system specialists, you got aviation safety inspectors, engineers, information technology, and the list goes on of some of the critical positions that we have at the FAA. Now, because we are an air traffic organization, we control the air traffic. Obviously, I'm going to talk a little bit more about air traffic control specialists more than some of the other positions that are mission critical at the FAA. Now, again, the primary responsibility is they want to be safe. They make certain that airlines are efficient. Things are done well. They control the air traffic on both ground and air. And if you notice, it says there, they work safely to guide over 50,000 aircraft per day. At any given time in the day, there's anywhere from between 5,000 to 7,000 planes in the air over the United States. So, and if you notice, if you think about that, there's not very many crashes. You don't hear about that very often. Unfortunately, if you think about 50,000 planes over the air in the United States, that doesn't include the entire world. The problem is when you do hear about a plane crash, you hear about it worldwide. It's around the world that you hear it. But air traffic, air travel is the safest form of travel in the world. And part of that is because you have well-trained air traffic controllers doing their job, and they're doing it effectively. Now, some may think, well, what is the qualifications, the minimum qualifications of being an air traffic controller? Most people think that you have to have a military background, you have to have been a pilot, something of that nature to be an air traffic controller. Here are the minimum requirements to be an air traffic controller. You have to be younger than 31 years of age to qualify. You must successfully complete a pre-employment exam, and you have to have at least 3 years of progressive work experience. Now, that can be work experience anywhere, or you can have a 4-year degree. Then you have to pass a medical examination, psychological examination, security background, and must be proficient in reading, writing, and understanding the English language. These are the basic qualifications for an individual who desires to be an air traffic controller. Now, with regard to that, there's a lot of training that's involved with air traffic controllers. And that's why the minimum qualifications are as they are, because all of the training is done at the FAA, as I mentioned earlier, at the Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City. And then after an individual may graduate from that particular training course, they're constantly trained year after year after year. So it's constant training to be an air traffic controller. And then there's different levels of air traffic controllers also. For instance, an individual that may be controlling traffic in the New York City area would be different from someone who is controlling traffic in Billings, Montana, just because of the traffic is less in Billings, Montana. It doesn't mean that that person is not a good air traffic controller. It just means that they would rather work in Billings, Montana than work in New York City. If they wanted to work in the New York area, they would just have to qualify to meet that criteria to be the air traffic controller in the New York area. And the reason why you think about from New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, all of that area is the prime area for air traffic starting first thing in the morning. If you was to ever see a map of air traffic in the AM, all of the traffic is leaving from those particular areas in the early morning time. If traffic is ever stalled in one of those areas at any given time, it will slow down air traffic across the country. So that's why it's important that you have individuals who really understand and know what they're doing when they're air traffic controllers, and that's why they receive so much training. Now let me ask you, does anyone have any questions regarding the air traffic control specialist position? I know I spoke a lot about a lot of things there.
Make sure they know that they can unmute themselves if they want to speak verbally.
So if you want to unmute and speak verbally, that would be fine. If anyone has any questions thus far. Okay, I'll take that as a no. All right. Now, the next position that's critical for the FAA is Airway Transportation System Specialist. And you can see some of the equipment when you go to an airport or anywhere across the country. This type of equipment is in various places. And when that equipment breaks down, you need an individual who is able to go out and fix that equipment as quickly as possible. The individuals who do that is called Airway Transportation System Specialists. These individuals, a lot of them work independently. They work on their own, and
that's me.
That's you. Okay. And so it's a difficult job, but it's a very well-paying job. The individuals who do this, they also take care of the airports. When you go through an airport, they see all those lights that's on the runways and things of that nature, all the equipment out there to guide individuals into the runways. The Airway Transportation System Specialists, those are the individuals who care for all of that equipment. And here is some of the qualifications to be an Airway Transportation System Specialist. And the main thing is it has to be an individual that's good with mathematics, electronics, and have some basic computer principles. If they have those, they can qualify to be an Airway Transportation System Specialist. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a job that an individual would have to be able to work independently, because a lot of these positions are located in very remote areas, such as the middle of the country. So a lot of the positions are in the Alaska area, because that's where a lot of the radars and things are, and individuals have to work on those. So just wanted to let you know that about the Airway Transportation System Specialist job. And the next job is the mission critical, is the aviation safety inspectors. Now, these are the individuals who check your plane prior to it taking off. Can you imagine if someone didn't inspect the plane to make certain that it was safe? That would be a problem. So the aviation safety inspectors are the individuals who do that. Now, specifically with regard to this job, it's more of a second career. And what I mean by that is this is an individual who in their previous career probably was a air pilot or a pilot for a long period of time, and now they may be retiring from being a pilot, but they still would like to work. The Federal Aviation Administration would hire them in as an aviation safety inspector. Whenever there's a plane crash anywhere in the world, if there's an American on that plane, someone from the FAA will go out and investigate that crash. So these aviation safety inspectors, they're involved with that, and they also do a lot of the other inspections when necessary. And here are just some of the basic qualifications. And for all of our jobs, I know you noticed that all of our jobs require individuals to be U.S. citizens. All right. And there it says we hire engineers in many specialties. There's several types of engineers that we hire at the FAA. Aerospace engineers, obviously. These are individuals who are familiar with putting together planes. They do a lot of work with Boeing and other individual companies that manufacture airplanes. And now I'm sure you've all heard the news over the past couple of weeks about the Boeing MAX plane that's being inspected. So we have several aerospace engineers that will be going to Boeing to do thorough inspections on those particular planes. Then we also have a large need for civil engineers. Civil engineers are involved in when we're building airports across the country. They test and design runways and how the airplanes are going to go into the actual airport. As you can see a picture of an airport there, someone had to design that particular airport. And they also are involved with determining what type of material they will be using for the runways. You can't just use any type of concrete. There's specific material that is used for runways at airports. We have a large facility in New Jersey. It's called the Tech Center. That's where they do a lot of testing of equipment, testing of runways. They even have an airplane there that they set on fire constantly to determine how to free an individual if the plane was to catch on fire. So there's a lot of specific testing that is done at the Tech Center in New Jersey. We also have a need for computer engineers, environmental engineers, industrial engineers, all types of engineers that any other organization may need. The FAA would have a need for them also.
Timmy, we do have one question here that Christopher did via chat about the availability of FAA positions in Miami for recent grads.
I don't know right off the top of my head of what specific positions that are available in Washington, D.C., in Miami. However, I will, as we go through this particular presentation, you will see how you can determine or research what positions are available for recent grads in the Miami area. And I'll show you that as we go through, if you don't mind waiting for a few minutes until we get to that particular page.
Thanks.
No problem. And this is just some of the qualifications to be an engineer. Obviously, you have to have that Bachelor's of Science degree or some type of bachelor's degree with a specialty on what type of engineer you want to be. Information technology. No company can function today without having an information technology department. And the FAA has a very large department. We have a lot of computers where we need desktop configuration and support individuals. We have a lot of computers that need hardware and software development and things of that nature. A large network at the FAA. Can you imagine if the communication was to go down from the network where air traffic controllers would not be able to communicate with pilots? That would be disastrous. So it's something that's very important at the FAA. So that's a large department that we have also. And here is just some of the other professional opportunities within the FAA. And these are not all of them. This is just some of the other more professional opportunities that we have. And the next page, you'll see we have even more careers and other positions at the FAA. If you think about it, you see there, it says a meteorological technician. Basically, that's a weather person. You know, a lot of people wonder, well, why would the FAA need someone who has background in weather? Well, when there is a storm, we need somebody to be able to look at the radars and see where this storm is going so that they can be able to control traffic and determine which way they're going to send traffic so that they won't send it directly into the storm. So that's a very critical position at the FAA. One that's not listed on here is mathematicians. That's another position that's highly recruited for at the FAA. So if you notice here, same thing that most companies, most organizations recruit for, at the FAA, we recruit for those positions also. And this here just shows you some of the benefits that being a part of the FAA. This is just some of those benefits. It's wonderful to have that opportunity to telework, and that depends on what job you're working. Obviously, a person that's a air traffic controller would not be able to telework. They can't do that from home, but other positions will have an opportunity to telework. And it shows you your sick leave and paid time off for holidays and things of that nature, and other annual leave that you would receive. And here we go. Now you're searching for government jobs. The best place to go to find what's going on at the FAA, you can go to two places. One, you can go to FAA.gov/jobs, and it'll tell you, you can search for jobs in various locations across the country. And also, you can go to USA Jobs. That will allow you to search jobs throughout the government. But if you're specifically looking for FAA jobs, you can go into USA Jobs, and then it will take you into the FAA's website. And the reason why I mentioned, when you asked about what jobs are available or open in the Miami area, it's difficult for us to know that because the FAA has over 45,000 employees, and sometimes it's hard to know what managers and different parts of the human resources department are recruiting in various parts of the country. So that's why we normally refer individuals to our website, where they post all of the jobs, all the positions for FAA. Now, you can apply for jobs at the FAA in two ways. One, either competitive, which is something that's open to the general public. Then you can have what is called non-competitive jobs. A non-competitive job is if an individual who would qualify, say, because they're a veteran, they may qualify because they have a Schedule A targeted disability. These individuals, if they have a veteran or a targeted disability, they can be asked to apply for a position non-competitively, meaning that individual, a hiring manager, can look at their resume and determine, hey, whether I want to hire this person or not, without even having to post the job to any other for any other candidates to apply for. And we'll talk about that a little bit more also. Again, here's the application process. Go to usajobs.gov, or you can go to the FAA's website. And in the USA Jobs, it'll ask you to create an account and sign in, and then you can even build a resume. You can put multiple types of resumes in the USA Jobs so that you can use whatever resume you need depending on what position you're applying for. Now, one of the things I will encourage you with regard to applying for positions in the government or at the FAA or wherever you're going to apply within the government, they would like to see very thorough resumes. I know maybe some of your professors at FIU is telling you, hey, when you create a resume, 1 page or something of that nature, but that's not the best thing when you're talking about federal government. They want to see a more thorough, more detailed resume. So you may say, well, I don't have very much experience because I've been in college for the past 3-4 years. Well, what they would like to see in your resume is any of the projects that you may have worked on while you were in college. You want to let them know, what did you do? What was your role in the project? What was the success rate? What were you working on? What did you build? What did you create? You want to give them all of those types of details, because what that does, it allows the manager to see that this individual is capable of working with others. This individual is capable of working in a team. This individual is capable of taking direction or possibly giving direction. So it's important that you keep that in mind too as you're applying for positions, whether it's with the FAA or any government agency. And here we're going back to that Schedule A hiring authority. As I mentioned, this is something for individuals that may have some type of disability, or they may be a veteran. It's called a Schedule A hiring authority. This gives a hiring manager the ability to hire a person without opening the position up to the public to apply for. And here's another thing about on-the-spot hiring with regard to individuals with a disability or veterans. So let's say, for instance, we were at a career fair and I had a hiring manager there, and you come to me and you say, hey, I would like to apply for this position. I'm a veteran, or I have this type of disability. And if the hiring manager saw your resume, the hiring manager could offer you the job right there on the spot. So that's why it's called on-the-spot hiring. Does that happen often? It does happen, but not as often as we would like for it to happen. But it does happen where individuals are able to be offered a position right on the spot. Now, what are some things that are required when you do the on-the-spot hiring for a person with a disability? There are certain forms they would have to fill out. Obviously, it's called a SF 256 form, where the individual would have to identify what disability they may have. They would have to have a letter from their doctor indicating that they have such disability, and then they could actually apply for a position based on the disability that they have. All right, we can pass this one. So I'll leave it up to you. You have any questions for me at this time?
Okay. Someone chatted, but then said their question was answered.
Okay.
By you, so.
Okay. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about briefly is this is how you can contact us, and this is just some things about the FAA that we pretty much talked about. But the one thing I want, and there's my contact information, if anyone needed to talk with me or like for me to review their resume or anything of that nature, I'll be more than happy to do that. And then, what? We missed one slide. It just went black. I wanted to share with you this slide.
Okay, we can send this in the email.
Okay. Okay. What I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about if any of you are interested in a internship with the FAA. The applying for the position is open now. You have until April 15th to apply for the position. And there's the website that you want to go to. It's www.faa.gov/jobs/students/internships. And you can apply submit your resume, but you have to do it by April 15th. Now, one of the good things with this particular internship, you're able to go, you could possibly be hired for a position anywhere in the country. Now, you may say, well, how am I going to do that if I don't live in that area? Well, with this particular position, you would be, they would sponsor you and provide housing for you, and you would also get a stipend on some pay for doing it also. But you would get the valuable work experience of being a part of the FAA. And one of the things that we do with our interns is when they come in, they're working with managers and project managers and engineers on projects at the FAA. We're not going to bring you in here to shovel paper around. We're going to have you working on projects. Now, last year, what they did with the interns, they had the interns work on a specific project. And that specific project was regarding unmanned aircraft. And what they was asked to do is to come up with some policy on what FAA could implement with regard to unmanned aircraft. So those individual interns had an impact on some policy issues that the FAA has now implemented. So there's a lot of thorough and good work that is done at the FAA with regard to student interns. So hopefully you'll be able to apply. If you have any questions on applying, please feel free to give me a call. Again, my number is 202-267-3410. My email address is Timmy, timmy.w.brown@faa.gov. Please feel free to give me a call. I'd be more than happy to assist you with applying for the position. Be more than happy to look at your resume, to review it, see where and give you any advice or suggestions on it. So just wanted to leave that with you. If you have any questions for me now, I'll be able to answer them.
One person did say via chat, Wari, what is SF-256 form?
That's just a particular form that's at the FAA. So for instance, you wouldn't have to fully identify yourself until on the SF-256 until you're hired. So an individual, let's say an individual comes in and say they have a particular disability. They have a note from the doctor saying that they have this disability. Then when they come on board and they're hired at the FAA, they would have to specifically identify on the SF-256 form what their disability is. So that's not a form that you could find anywhere. That's a form that you would fill out once you become an employee of the FAA.
Christopher asked, I take it they prefer chatting their questions as opposed to speaking them. If there are specific majors the FAA looks for when choosing interns?
No, there's no specific major. Obviously, we would like to have individuals with some of the skills that we would be looking for, because hopefully the goal was to take it from an internship to a full-time employee. But there's no specific majors that they're looking for with regard to an internship. Basically, they're looking for someone that's willing to come in, willing to work, and willing to learn about the FAA.
That's all that's pending, unless they have anything else.
Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Okay. Being none, you've given your emails. I've given my email address. They can get in touch with us for further questions. All right. Thank you so much, Timmy, for being here.
Well, I thank you all for allowing me to spend some time with you. And again, if you need to talk with me, you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call at either my number, or you can send me an email. I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you briefly and answer any questions that you have about the internship program or the FAA. Thank you very much.